Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joining us in studio is Deborah Flora. And I want to play a little bit of what Richard Holtorf said yesterday. He was on our show. He's a candidate for Congressional District 4. We asked him about his opponents. And true to form, Richard Holtorf had some strong opinions.
You know, I raised 5 daughters, and I'm going to say this loud and proud. My 5 daughters, if they stood in front of me in a group of 20, 50, 100 people, dressed like Boebert, I would be disgusted. I don't know what her problem is. She needs to learn how to dress. You know, Jerry's the old guard. He's kissed the ring. He's talked. He's got all the endorsements from all the old guard Republicans. But where has that gotten us, Jeff? Bill, where's that gotten us in the last 5, 10 years? Well, Deborah Flora. Boy, you're making me opine about all of them. And she gave her little speech that she learned how to do when she was running for Miss Colorado or Miss America or whatever. They, you know, those speeches about, ending world hunger and saving the world. And she's all gloss and shine. And I don't know how much depth she has. She claims to be a fighter. I'm inside the Capitol fighting. She's been on the steps blowing that horn for education and talking through the bullhorn. But what has she done in politics? What has she done in public service? You know, she went to Hollywood, spent a long time there.
All right, Deborah Flora, when you heard that, how did it make you feel?
I thought it was very fun because I really thought, you know what, first of all, the voters of CD4 really are looking for someone who's going to focus on the issues that they are dealing with, not the personal attacks, the petty name calling or anything like that. And it's a real opportunity because there's such a contrast in this race. And it just gives me one more opportunity to talk to the voters. And I think it's funny too, because, you know, right where you're sitting, Jeff, that's where I sat for years, not just as a radio host, but as the director of public policy, fighting to stop the terrible policies coming out of DC, coming out of Denver. And I'm so grateful that the voters know that. And what they're really looking for is someone that is going to fight for them every single day, like I've been doing over years, whether it's for parental rights, educational freedom, protecting children, you know, stopping what's happening at the border. Right here in this station, I was proud to help lead that charge to reverse the sanctuary status of Colorado when we went down there last year and had a petition. So I just thought it was a whole lot of fun and just gives us one more opportunity for our campaign to talk about why we are winning over this this wonderful group of voters in CD4 and why we've got that big announcement to share with you right now.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that in just a second, though.
You got it.
Did you find it sexist?
You know, that we live in such a world of identity politics. I just found it to be one more thing that is dividing our party. You know, when we look at the makeup of our electorate, growing up here on Lowry Air Force Base, we were nearly 40% Republicans. I talked to so many great Republicans and who are now unfortunately considering becoming unaffiliated. The reason why is not our principles. It's our personal attacks. They're tired of the division and the drama. So I just think generally, personal attacks are just beneath those who want to serve honorably without drama, representing the great people of CD4. You
know, we just hosted Lauren Boebert on as well. Here's what I'm seeing from both of you on this. Is you kind of know Richard, right? It's like, well, it's like when one of your buddies, you may not agree with what he says and you may, you know, generally find it offensive, but it's, you know, it's Richard. Is that, I mean, both of you kind of be like, I'm on the campaign trail. I see this guy regularly. I have no animosity towards him. And so you kind of seem to be brushing it off, similar to the way Lauren responded.
Well, I think the thing is there is such a contrast, which is great. I have put over 15,000 miles on my car traveling these 21 counties. I've been at over 250 appearances and meet and greets, listening to voters since I got into this race. And the number one thing I'm hearing from everyone is they are tired of the personal attacks. They're tired of the drama. They're tired of the dysfunction that's going on in DC. They're tired of all of that. And what they want is someone who is laser focused, as I am, on the issues that keep them up at night. The open border, the nearly $35 trillion of debt that's growing by $1 trillion every 100 days, who is focused solely on serving them honorably, being the conservative fighter they can be proud of. So that's why I just brush it off, because we are winning and have so much momentum because the voters know that's what I'm focused on. What matters to them, not personal attacks. And it's time to just stop that dysfunction and drama. And that's really where we're focused. And so it's just one more opportunity to talk about that contrast.
So let's talk about the race.
Yes.
Lauren Boebert has a cash advantage. She's got the endorsement from Donald Trump, and in some polls, she seems to be leading. How do you defeat Lauren Boebert?
The wonderful thing about this race is the contrast. And I just want to go ahead and make this announcement here because it is breaking news.
Sure.
This morning, we just received the endorsement from the Gazette. And one of the things that I so appreciate about that is because they recognize that it is time for new leadership. It's time for big, bold ideas instead of business as usual. It's time to get back to what I call Reagan Republicanism, where we focus on persuading our neighbors to join us. Right now in DC, there is so much dysfunction. The Republicans look like we cannot even govern ourselves, let alone govern a country. And so people know that I am a fighter, but I'm a fighter on principle, not personal attacks. And we are losing ground as Republicans, not because our principles don't work. They do. We have the principles and the policies to solve every single issue. But where we are losing is on the personalities that people are tired of. So I'm so grateful for the Gazette endorsement. And they talk about how that does bring, or what I'm bringing to the table is the new leadership, the stopping business as usual. And one of the things too, by the way, Jeff, that they talk about in the endorsement today from the Gazette, this district is now 73% suburban. It's a different district. Now, I spend the majority of my time in the Eastern Plains because those good people are farmers, are ranchers, are oil and energy workers. They deserve to be represented and listened to, which is what I will do. But if we're going to hold this seat, if we're going to keep it in the Republican column, it has to be someone who persuades our neighbors to join us instead of driving them further out of our party.
Talking with Deborah Flora, just breaking news. Endorsement from the Gazette, Deborah Flora for Congress in Colorado's CD4. This is what they say. As Colorado tilts to the left, the state's Republicans need fresh, compelling, dynamic leaders who can lift their party out of its current doldrums, especially in those stretches of the state that still lean to the right. Voters in one such region, the vast and overwhelmingly Republican 4th Congressional District, which spans the Eastern Plains, have an opportunity to send just such a rising star to Congress. Deborah Flora not only has the ability to put the district's deep conservatism into words and deeds in Washington, she also has the potential to infuse new vitality into the Colorado Republican cause overall. It's why the Gazette editorial board wholeheartedly endorses Deborah Flora for Congress in CD4. What does that mean to you to get that endorsement?
It's very humbling because I think it recognizes that my entire goal for doing this, Jeff, I was sitting in the chair where you were. I could have just been on the radio continuing to fight and lead rallies and speak all over and just live a much more comfortable life than being willing to go and fight in DC. What it means to me is it recognizes the fact that we can turn this entire thing around if we have new leadership that's focused solely on constitutional principles, which simply means limited government, getting government out of people's lives so they can live freely, securing the border so they can live safely, making sure that they can run their businesses and raise their families according to their own values. And it is time for new leadership. It is time to have someone that can bring people together, that can turn our party around. And I am honored. I'm deeply honored that they recognize that because I'm running for one reason. And honestly, that's the biggest question that anyone should ask if they're voting in this district. Why is someone running? Is it just to stay in a position? Are they running for a seat or are they running from a seat? Are they having deep roots in this district where I've been fighting alongside my neighbors for years? And the only reason why I'm running is because I love this country. I love my neighbors. I want to see them living with freedom and dignity, free from government control, feeling safe. And I want to serve these people. That's the only reason why I'm running for the seat to go to Washington, D.C.
So you did get this big endorsement from the
Yes.
Gazette. This is a big one. You didn't get Donald Trump's endorsement. Why did he get it wrong?
Here's the reality. Everyone expected he was going to endorse Lauren. He has previously, and I think he's someone that just continues on with a loyalty to someone. I think what President Trump doesn't know about what's right here on the ground is what the people of this district are saying. They want representative government. What that means is someone that is authentically from this area, has been fighting alongside their neighbors for years, understands what has been happening. I mean, I've been standing alongside my neighbors when we flipped the Douglas County School Board, when I was standing up with so many other parents to get our schools back open again. I've been traveling the Eastern Plains for years when I wasn't even running for office, standing up and supporting their values. I've been listening to them for years. So I think that's what got missed in this endorsement. And I respect President Trump when he is in the White House and we retake the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. I'm going to make sure we do not squander that period of time. It's why when people go to my website, they'll see the roadmap to restoring America. I'm the only candidate that wrote out everything I'm going to be fighting for, because the next time we have all three branches of government, we cannot squander the opportunity to reform government itself, get it back to its proper role to serve the people instead of dictating to the people. So that's what I would say about that. It was not a surprise, and I look forward to fighting alongside President Trump when he is in the White House.
Well, and I think it's important for people to remember, at one point he endorsed Scott Tipton over Lauren Boebert. So those endorsements don't always work out, but thank you for your answer on that. So let's talk about the district. This is a unique district. Your strength, this is what I see for most people, right? Jerry Sonnenberg, Richard Holtorf, they're going to kind of pull from the plains. You have great name ID. You have great experience where the people are,
right?
Which is primarily Douglas County. Does that give you an advantage, you think, in this race? Is that where your campaign is really going to pull from?
I think what's great about this district, it's amazing. And I say diversified, not diverse, because that word has gotten completely hijacked. It's a very diversified district. The most important thing is for all of the amazing people that are on the Eastern Plains, who really are the backbone of our state and our country, providing our food, our oil and gas, working so hard. They understand I have the same values, and I'm out there all the time. And they know that my commitment to them is I will be there listening. I'm going to be so present, just like the 15,000 miles on my car. I'm going to start, by the way, measuring it by how many sets of tires I've gone through too, because they deserve new roads out there, which is a proper role of government. But you do bring up something really important. Many people don't realize that when this seat was redistricted before the 22 election, it is now 73% suburban. Now, why does that matter? Because nothing is sure in Colorado. And while this is a Republican seat, if we do not have someone that will resonate with our neighbors who are moving out of Denver because they realize the failed policies of the Democratic Party, if we do not have someone that can persuade them why our policies are the solutions to what keeps them up at night, we will eventually lose this seat. And the reality is I've won more straw polls and surveys than all of the other candidates combined, and I've won all of them in the population center of our district. And as the Gazette endorsement pointed out, it is time to have new leadership, energized leadership, so that we can begin to persuade our neighbors once again that we as the Republican Party have the solutions. And that's what I'm focused on.
So I'm going to get a little personal here. This is what I hear primarily from women voters in my life. They appreciate everything Lauren Boebert's done. They appreciate her voting record, all that stuff. It's the personal issues that kind of bother them. And they're leaning your direction because they don't see those personal issues. Is that an important issue in this race?
Here's what I will do, because I do believe in standing on principles and not personal attacks. So I'm not going to talk about someone else's personal life, but what I will talk is about what my plumb line is. I am so proud to be a mom. My husband and I have been married for 23 years, going on 24 years. He
is a big fan of you.
Oh, he's an amazing.
I think that's important for people to note. And you don't see a lot of this in politics. And this is very personal to me because it's something that breaks my heart when I see families fall apart because one of the spouses gets into politics. It's a noble business to be in. You're trying to serve people, but the demands on the job end up putting a tremendous amount of stress on families, and you see those families fall apart. Jonathan Flora is a very faithful man.
He loves a great man.
He's your biggest champion.
Yeah.
He is there for you all the time. And when I talk to him, he's always bragging about you. He's a great guy.
He calls himself my publicist. But he's much more than that. I do want to start by saying my life partner, my husband of 23 years, he's an 82nd Airborne veteran. He is a committed husband and father. We are partners in everything. We have a business together. We have produced documentaries and public service campaigns to address military suicide prevention. He lives with passion and purpose, just like I do. That's why when together as a couple, we decided that I was going to step into this arena, it was a joint decision. People have wanted me to run for elected office ever since our kids were 2 and 3 years old. And I always said to them, in conjunction with Jonathan and I talking together and praying together about everything, my first commitment is to raise our kids. While I was working during that time, I was on the air for over 12 years. I've been producing films along with my husband, including one with Gary Sinise, where we highlighted first responders and we highlighted our military. We did the documentary, Whose Children Are They?, that exposed what's going on in our school system. But I do believe that if you send someone to Washington, D.C., whose foundation isn't firm, that is where we see people peel off and become a part of the swamp. If you don't go to DC knowing it is a desperate, lonely place where people are trying to manipulate you, if you have something open in your life where your foundation isn't firm, I don't blame anybody, but I don't know how they stand strong. We have a firm foundation. And I always tell people that my plumb line is in this order of accountability. It's to God who gave us our rights, to the Constitution that codifies them, to the citizens to which I'm answerable. But in that structure, my husband and I, we're a partnership in everything that we do. And it takes a strong man to support someone to go into this office. But I'm grateful for that. And so while I will not talk about anyone else's life, I'm very proud to talk about the fact that when the great voters of CD4 send me to Washington, they'll know that I'm going to stand firm because I'm going for one reason: to preserve this great country for my children, our children, your children. And I have a firm foundation that will make sure I don't get off track, because I know where I'm fighting, and I will come back home and be with my fellow citizens where I've been fighting alongside them in CD4 for years.
We did get some text messages on this, and so I want to respect the texters, as well as Richard Holtorf brought this up. Were you collecting unemployment from California at one point?
So glad he brought this out. This is a lie that somebody started when I ran for the U.S. Senate race. And the unemployment, and this is actually why I'm even more qualified, I think, to run for this position. It was when I was sitting in your chair, Jeff, when I was on Salem. COVID happened. The shutdown happened in 2020. And half of the station was furloughed because of the situation. I was like millions and millions of Americans, hardworking families who, because of an overreach of government, I had to, for the sake of my family, take Colorado unemployment for a matter of months, very limited period of time. During that time, by the way, my desire to serve and fight against the overreach of government expanded exponentially. I spent that summer with 2 kids being told they could not go to school, a son who lost 1.5 years of his football season, talking to parents where their kids were suicidal or getting on drugs or whatever, fighting to reopen our schools, to reopen our country, and then growing our business. And soon after that, we started launching several other projects. So glad to set that record straight. But that is what equips me as someone who was forced, like many hardworking Colorado families, to briefly take Colorado unemployment, to stand against that, fight against it, and make sure, by the way, Jeff, it never, ever happens in our country again, that churches and small businesses are shut down while big box stores and abortion clinics are left open. That is upside down. It can never happen again.
Talking with Deborah Flora. She's in studio. She's running for Congress in Colorado's Congressional District 4. Big announcement today. She just received the endorsement from the Gazette. She's responding also to some charges made from one of her opponents yesterday, Richard Holtorf. We'll continue this conversation, so stick around. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Deborah Flora joining us live in studio. Breaking news just an hour or two ago. The Gazette endorsing Deborah Flora for Congress. Let's go through this just briefly. A warm and engaging personality. She also promises to be diligent and effective at constituent service, all the more crucial in a largely rural district dotted with small agricultural communities scattered apart. Another candidate in the race, popular Logan County Commissioner Jerry Sonnenberg, has deep agricultural roots. As a lifelong farmer and rancher, he doubtless would represent the ag community well in Congress, as he did for years, and he served the state legislature. But Flora stands out from the pack on something of pivotal importance to the state that is at a critical crossroads. She distinguishes herself as a face and voice for her party's future. A media entrepreneur, a nationally recognized parental rights advocate, a familiar voice on talk radio, and a seasoned filmmaker who has honed conservative messaging, she is a thought leader who can advance bold ideas. Let's talk about the party. How do you feel about the direction of the Colorado Republican Party?
Well, here's what I would say is I call myself a constitutional conservative and a Reagan Republican. And what does that mean? Reagan talked about the big tent. And the big tent, we don't move or compromise. The tent poles are firmly in the Constitution because that is the greatest document written for the flourishing of human beings. So we don't move it. We don't compromise. But the reality is my goal, my focus is to grow the Republican Party by persuading people to join us, not purging and purifying our party. We have an aspect of our party right now that's telling Republicans to get out of the big tent, let alone inviting others to join us. I really believe that our principles, our policies are the answer to everything that keeps people up at night. Our neighbors who maybe had a different yard sign in front of their yard. Well, how did Reagan win 49 out of 50 states? Starting by this premise, your neighbor is not your enemy. Your neighbor is someone that you just simply need to persuade why what they're dealing with, whether it is skyrocketing inflation, whether it's not having a say in their children's upbringing, whether it is the open border and the lack of safety they feel on their streets, whatever that is, come join us because we have the solutions. People are tired of celebrity and sound bites. They want solutions. So what I want to talk about and why I appreciate the Gazette endorsement is I want to look forward. How do we grow our party? When we're down to 24% Republicans in this state, when I was growing up on Lowry Air Force Base, we were nearly 40%. People aren't leaving our party because of our principles. They're leaving it because of our personalities. So in this seat, as the next Congresswoman from CD4, my focus will be to regrow our party, to begin to persuade people why we have the solutions to what is impacting their lives, serving the citizens, and then using this seat, by the way, to help down ballot races. It's been a long time since we've had someone in federal office here in Colorado that understood from a seat like CD4, it'll be a safe Republican seat if I'm the nominee. From that seat, I want to help down ballot races so that other great Republicans who will advance our ideas, advance freedom, advance solutions, have the support they need so we can also turn it around in Denver also, because people in this state are getting squeezed between Denver and DC. And it's time that we begin to persuade those who are fleeing Denver, coming down into Douglas County, which is half of the electorate, persuading them to vote our direction because we have the solutions. We've had enough of a time here in Colorado to see the blueprint. The Democratic one-party rule is destroying our state. We just have to be able to persuade our neighbors to join us. That's my vision for the Republican Party.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about the larger view of the Republican Party. Deb Flora, candidate for CD4 here with Jeff and Bill. Also former talk show host here on 710 KNUS. It's nice to have her back in her stomping ground.
Thank you, Bill.
I saw you and Jeff wrestling over that chair. So who's going to be in the main chair?
Hey, I was happy to give it up. I even offered it. I was like, the queen is back in the studio. She may have her.
He gets the captain's chair. I've got great respect for what you all do every single morning here.
We appreciate it. We appreciate you listening. Now, let's talk. We talked Colorado Republican Party. I want to talk larger Republican Party. And this is in response to a text message that we got. They wanted to know, just can you outline or sketch your opinion about Donald Trump and him leading the Republican Party?
Absolutely. I think this is where I come down on this topic is All we needed was 3 years to see the difference between one set of policies and the exact opposite. Let's look at under Donald Trump's presidency versus Joe Biden's presidency. Under Donald Trump, he should have received the Nobel Peace Prize for the Abraham Accords. I called that the Hanukkah miracle when I was sitting in your seat, Jeff, because you had the UAE, you had Bahrain lighting the menorah at the Wailing Wall. You fast forward to the incredibly disastrous policies of Joe Biden and the Democrats. We have October 7th. Just look at the difference there. The worst barbaric attack in the history of the world, probably since the Holocaust. That difference. You look at what's happening on the southern border. Under Donald Trump's policies in 2019, 0 people on the terror watch list were apprehended. We were down there last year for an extensive period here at the station, working to turn around our sanctuary status and get the information. 169 people were apprehended on the terror watch list as of September. When you look at that, and by the way, that is just the ones they apprehended. The Border Patrol told us that that's probably about 1/3 of the gotaways that actually got across our border. You look at the tax cuts that need to be made permanent under Donald Trump and how that prospered the people of this country. And what's happening now with families that I talk to every single day on the campaign trail who are wondering, can I pay the bills? People on a fixed income telling me they're getting powdered milk instead of regular milk now because they can't afford it. Every marker you look at, you understand that Donald Trump's policies were so much better for America than what we're experiencing now. So I think that clearly speaks for itself. And one last thing I would say, the work that was done in our judicial branch, the Supreme Court we have, the justices and the judges that were appointed all across our country. Honestly, I think that's where we are saving our republic at this moment. I've led some rallies in front of the Supreme Court steps. I've been asked by some great organizations to do that. Jeff, you and I were there at one not too long ago. That is a legacy of the Trump administration and everyone who helped confirm those judges and justices. So that's how I feel about Donald Trump. And I look forward to fighting to turn our country back around when we retake the Senate, the House, and the executive branch. We will not squander that opportunity.
Would you support mass deportations?
Here's how I look at it. Having been at the border and speaking to the Border Patrol, ICE, and DEA, we really can't even talk about what comes after securing the border until we secure the border. Because what happens is if we begin to talk about what happens afterwards, the drug cartels manipulate and use that to have a mass surge on our border. So the order in which we have to do things, number one, secure the border, get rid of the incentives that sanctuary states are laying out as a false welcome mat, causing both a humanitarian and national security disaster. We need to make sure the Border Patrol actually has the money to patrol, not process, which is all that they're doing right now. And once we do that, then we can look at what we're going to do next. But I will say this. The 10 million people who come over in the last 3 years, that's an estimate that we heard from Border Patrol, 90% of them were of military age, young single adult males. We certainly need to identify those people immediately and get them to go back to the other side of the border.
How about a national abortion ban?
The term that I use is national pro-life legislation, because we've already seen that. We've seen a legislation for partial birth abortion banning that horrendous practice. My husband and I made a film about that because that is barbaric, and the United States of America deserves far better than that. The Born Alive Act, that is a situation where everyone can agree that that is not something that is something a civilized society would stand for. So that's where I start on it, and then we can go from there.
Now, Deborah, got a question for you on Congress.
Yes.
But not about the Congress you're going to join, the current Congress.
Yes.
So I need you to kind of act a little bit like maybe a coach or an analyst. What do you think the missteps or mistakes the current GOP House have made in this term?
Well, number one, it's the situation we've been talking about with the Republican Party. It's time that we unite together and focus on what we're really fighting. When we've got people like Rashida Tlaib, who is basically a propagandist for Hamas, we need to remember what we're fighting, which is not one another. Now, I'm all for holding speakers accountable, but it is time that we show the American people that we can govern ourselves as a party, let alone govern the entire country. So what I would have seen doing, for instance, with the Kevin McCarthy situation, I'm not a fan of one person in all the United States of America being able to call the vote of the speaker. But if that is a necessary step, then what we do is we come together the way that those who are worth the right to govern come together behind closed doors as a caucus, talk it through, and do not come out of that room until there is a plan going forward. The fact that we went 21 days without a speaker, October 7th happened. There was a budget that was due. That was not a responsible way to govern our country. So number one, I would begin to galvanize the Republican caucus to work together for the ultimate goal, which is serving the great people of CD4 in this country.
I think you've just answered one question I was going to ask about whether or not you'd vote to oust Mike Johnson with MTG's proposal. I'm assuming that would be a no, that you would not, but I'll let you answer. What would you do? Would you support or not support the move to oust Johnson right now?
What I would do is I would get the Republicans, as I was just mentioning, together in a room, and we cannot oust a speaker unless we have a plan going forward. I've yet to see that is the case. And the reality is we're just 1 or 2 votes away from having Hakeem Jeffries as our Speaker of the House. That would be devastating to everyone, because while that might feel great to grandstand on an issue, we've got to grow our majority in the House of Representatives. We've got to take over the Senate. We've got to take over the executive branch, reverse that into Republican control. And until we do that, we have to be unified. Now, if there is a plan and they get together behind closed doors and there's a plan of who they would nominate, but we've not seen that in this current Congress. It's really a lot of dysfunction and drama. And that is why we're getting so much support, because people know that I'm not about dysfunction and drama. I'm about standing on the principles and advancing our policies.
Would you have voted to send funding to Ukraine?
I would have voted for the Israel portion of the package. I have spoken to folks, and the Republican Jewish Coalition and others have said anyone who voted against the Israel part really shouldn't even call themselves a Republican. If we cannot stand for our number one ally, it's both a moral imperative because of what they're fighting there, literally barbarism versus civilization. But in addition, they're the only democratically elected country in that area, and it's a national security issue. That was voted on separately. I would have voted for that.
I think the critique for some of the Republicans that didn't vote for it was that money was going to be going to Palestine and Hamas, and they didn't want to support that.
I have spoken in long depth with people of the Jewish community and the Israel community. I have been endorsed by someone who is an IDF captain that fought in the Yom Kippur War and every war since then, spoken to AIPAC, spoken to the RJC, and they were for it. They were for it because they understand that Israel, by the way, has already been putting their own humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip rebuilding. And we have got to stand with our ally, because they have 2 defenses in this world situation right now. Number one, their own amazing ingenuity and military prowess. And number 2, the world understanding that America stands with them. I was speaking to some folks from Tel Aviv just last night, and they said the only reason why Iran has not sent a nuclear weapon into Israel is because they understand that America is standing with them. If we ever signal otherwise, it is a dangerous situation.
Now, Deb, I want to follow up on that answer there on why you had questions about the Ukraine funding. Mm-hmm. What is your question about the funding for Ukraine and the conflict there? What are the issues you have about not being able to support that funding?
Well, I did say I would definitely not, but here's what I would have to look at. And first of all, let me frame it this way. I've been in the Soviet Union. I was there the day the coup happened. I am not a fan of what has come beforehand. And really, Putin is just 4.0, 5.0 of the whole, Stalinist movement. So I'm not a fan of his aggression. What we do, however, have to make sure is that we do things in the order of priority of national security for the United States of America. Number one in this order, our border. That is our national security priority. It is our sovereignty priority, and it's a humanitarian disaster. Number 2, Israel, because that is an ideological and existential threat to everything we understand to be Western civilization, and we have to stand there. Ukraine would be third, so I also think it's disproportionate. The reality, however, is we need to have accountability of where that money is going, because that, I believe, is what is lacking. And when there's been an ongoing investigation of the Biden administration and their ties to Ukraine, we have to understand very much where all of those things come into play. So I am certainly not an isolationist, but we have to look at these in the right order. And the litmus test is always our national security. And that's the order in which I would be looking at it.
Deborah Flora joining us in studio with the big announcement that the Gazette has endorsed her. It's the right combination of skills, they say, principles, and dedication the 4th Congressional District needs, and it's what Colorado's Republican Party needs now more than ever. We urge a vote for Deborah Flora for Congress in the June 25th Republican primary. You can learn more about Deborah Flora if you go to her website, deborahflora.com. That's DEBORAH, Flora, FLORA.com if you want to learn more about Deborah Flora. She was the queen of 710 KNUS for many years, gave up the seat to run for office because according to FCC rules, that's what you have to do. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you coming by and saying hi to everybody. It was fun. Everybody came by and was giving her hugs. She had a great tenure.
And so many wonderful text messages saying they loved hearing you on the air. Danny Cash from Danny Cash Hot Sauce said it was great to hear your voice again. I know you're a personal friend. Lots of people giving you shout outs.
Wonderful. Well, I have to say, it's so great to talk to all you wonderful 710 KNUS listeners. And it's been an honor to have served you all for over 12 years on this station and also as the Director of Public Policy. Each and every one of you listening are a citizen who makes a difference. And it'll be my greatest honor to serve so many of you as the next Congresswoman for the 4th Congressional District. Go to deborahflora.com.